This morning on Forever Young, a guide to life after 50, caring for your older parents. Over 54 million families are struggling with financial and health care decisions for elderly relatives who are often unwilling to take help and are unable to talk about it. Valerie Van Boeven is the author of Aging Answers and president of Senior Care Solutions. Valerie, good morning to you. Thanks
for having me.
This is something that's in the back of a lot of our minds as we deal with our parents and watch them grow older, but sometimes we don't think about the conversation until we begin to see signs that their life is going through a change. How do you even begin to broach this subject?
Well, it's something that's very important these days. As we have our population is aging, we want to make sure that we know what our parents' wishes are. So in order to broach that subject, to get that conversation started, you want to ask some very pointed questions. You want to know how mom and dad want to be taken care of. You want to know where they want to be taken care of and how they're going to pay for it.
Well, back up a second. How do I even initiate that conversation? Assuming that they're healthy and things are going along, again, it's not in the forefront of your mind until something happens. So if you want to be proactive, how do you say, oh, by the way, let's talk about putting you in a home someday?
Well, no, you definitely don't want to say that. What you want to do is pick a time and place that's quiet, first of all, and say to mom and dad, you know, if I ever need to help you, I really want to know what the best way is going to be to take care of you. How can I make sure that you are well cared for? I want you to enjoy the second half of life and all of the years that you have ahead of you. So how can I make sure that you're well taken care of? Make the conversation about you as the adult child as opposed to, Mom and Dad, I don't think you're doing very well.
And you suggest we put it down this way, discuss who, where, and how. Those are really the key questions here.
Who do you want to have take care of you? If you're expecting that it's me that's taking care of you, then I need to know that well in advance. And how do you want to be taken care of? Do you want to be in assisted living? Would you rather be at home? Most of the time people are going to say, I really want to be at home.
But then you have to obviously discuss some legal arrangements because you're going to perhaps be acting on their behalf, and it's not as simply as saying, well, they asked me to.
That's right. One of the most important legal documents that everyone needs to have in place, no matter how old you are, is if you're an adult, a durable power of attorney. That gives your adult children or the person that you trust the information that they need so that they can sign those checks for you. If you need someone to pay bills, they can make financial decisions, health care decisions. When you are unable to make those decisions for yourself, there is someone in your family who can do that for you.
At the same time, as the adult who may be looking out for them, I need to know where those papers are.
You need to know where they are, definitely. Everybody needs, a lot of adult children come to us in crisis, and they spend hours searching the house for legal documents, insurance documents. Have everything in one place, a fireproof box or in a lockbox at a bank, and be sure to tell the kids where those documents are.
All right, let's talk about finding resources, because this doesn't come cheaply.
No, it doesn't. Health care and long-term care is very expensive. You want to make sure you're getting quality care. You want to make sure your parents can pay for it. When you're having difficulty or you are starting that conversation about long-term care, sometimes parents are they don't really want to talk about it, and that's okay, because what we're talking about here is maintaining our independence and choice. Sometimes a professional geriatric care manager can help with those things. And a care manager is a person who's degreed in the health science. They're just like a lawyer or accountant. It's hiring a third party to come in and say, here are my observations, and here's a blueprint or a plan of care that's going to help you, guide you through the next.
Can a doctor or hospital often steer you to those kind of people?
They can. There are websites that are available. The Professional Geriatric Care Manager is a member of the National Association of Professional Geriatric Care Managers, and you can search for one in your area on the internet.
All right, we've been talking proactively, having this conversation and making sure legal documents. What happens, though, is we know that our health can turn on a dime, older people, younger people. What do you do if you haven't done that kind of planning and suddenly you find that your parents or elderly relative is in immediate need?
Yeah, dealing with a long-term care crisis can be emotionally overwhelming, financially overwhelming. So in that case, when that situation occurs, you definitely want to make sure that you know who your professional geriatric care managers are in your area or your social service representatives. You want to have the advice of an elder law attorney, perhaps, because if those legal documents and those insurance products and those other things aren't already in place, those people can help you manage the crisis of long-term care.
All right, and lastly, this happens in some families, a lot of siblings, and there's a disagreement as to how to take care of mom and dad. What's the best advice in that situation?
Open lines of communication. When there are a lot of siblings and one of them is usually designated as in charge of making most of the decisions, the person who lives closest, you want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. keep the lines of communication open, make sure there's a third party involved who can kind of negotiate and satisfy the needs of everybody in the family as far as those decisions that are being made. Try not to be too judgmental of the person who's the closest to that parent and actually having to make those decisions. They're doing the best they can.
Boy, this is all important stuff and stuff that a lot of folks can relate to. Valerie Van Boeven, thanks very much for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back, but first, this is Today on NBC.
News with the people making it. Paula's on now. Tonight and every weeknight, 8 Eastern on CNN.
Birds of a feather flock together, and that trend has been especially true for retirees. But while so-called snowbirds may have changed the population makeup of areas like Florida, more retirees are actually rethinking a move to warmer weather, choosing instead to live closer to their families. Is this a wise move? Valerie Van Boeven is the president of Senior Care Solutions, an education and information provider for families, aging adults, and long-term care insurance consumers. She joins me now from St. Louis, Missouri. Valerie, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Allie. Good to see you.
Is this really a trend, people deciding they want to stick closer to home?
I'd say we're seeing that it's more and more of a trend. Aging adults are wanting to form good relationships with their adult children, and they want to be role models for their grandchildren. And so they're moving to where their adult children are as opposed to away from them to the Sun Belt.
Is there a financial motivation toward this trend, that people don't want to spend money traveling back and forth, or is it just a convenience thing, or you're going to live longer in retirement so you just don't want the hassle?
I think that a lot of this has to do with longevity. We find that we are living much, much longer these days, and therefore when people are considering where they're going to spend the second half of their lives, they want to be close to family so that if they need care in later years, their family is there to help them. I think that's one of the main motivators, and financial issues definitely play a role in that.
There are also other issues. If you decide you want to stick closer, it changes the entire dynamic about how you relate to your kids and their kids.
Absolutely. You have to establish boundaries and respect each other's privacy.
Because you'll become the babysitter of choice always.
That's right. You'll become the babysitter of choice always. But truly, everybody has to really establish those boundaries and privacy issues well in advance of making that kind of move. There are also other things to consider, like the cost of living in the area where you might be moving to, and is your retirement income going to cover those costs? It may have been lower in the place you lived before, and now you're moving to a city like maybe New York City,
sure,
and it's much higher. So you need to consider those things as well.
And actually, I was just talking to Steve Sloan from the AARP. You make
Yes.
a point that that's actually not a bad place to start for doing some research.
Absolutely. AARP is not a bad place to start. The Area Agency on Aging is not a bad place to start. And when people are looking for independent retirement communities and they're looking for good resources, a geriatric care manager in the area where they're moving to is an excellent resource to find that independent retirement community.
All right, what are some of the things you need to think about? I mean, if you were thinking of relocating to Florida, enough people have done that so you know whether these communities exist and where the care is and things like that. If all of a sudden you're deciding to stick around in St. Louis or New York, the services available to you might be different.
The services available are going to be a little bit different. You want to locate people in your community or in the new community where you're moving to who have access to all of the senior resources that are available, like a geriatric care manager or someone who specializes in long-term care, your local area agency on aging, city hall, and geriatric care managers will be absolutely your #1 resource when you move to a new location and you're starting over again with your family.
I'm perhaps not as familiar as I should be with the term geriatric care manager.
A geriatric care manager is someone who helps seniors and their families with issues like moving, transitioning to new living facilities. It's someone who can help with any issue related to aging. They can be a resource and an information network like we are, and get you to the right place, help you find the right living community that meets your needs now and in the future.
Valerie, good to talk to you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Valerie Van Boeven is the president of Senior Care Solutions in St. Louis, Missouri. Just ahead, a look at the 5 biggest mistakes that people make in retirement. Then, taking your calls on
clinically proven to reduce cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.
And a big thank you, Janice. And this morning on our continuing series, Forever Young, A Guide to Life After 50, relocating to be near the grandkids. More and more older Americans are opting out of moving to traditional places to retire, like Florida and Palm Springs, to live near their grandchildren, wherever they may be. Stephen and Joan Kleinman are getting used to the winter chill in Pennsylvania again. They moved back 6 months ago after 8 years in sunny Florida.
It was always green, and the scenery was lovely. The weather was terrific. I just felt better, less stressed.
That was before their son had a baby and their daughter had twins, a boy and girl.
That basically changed my life. The 3 babies in 2 months, it was just an overwhelming thing to me.
They commuted back and forth for a year or more, but ultimately chose not to be part-time grandparents.
And it was time that we put our priorities in order of what is really important to us, what makes a difference in our lives, and it was family and children.
Having them back here is great because they were missing all this.
Being 2 minutes away,